The higher the tariff, the more likely it is that the company will come into the United States and build a factory in the United States so it doesn't have to pay the tariff.
How about this for a warning from one auto industry expert? The price of new cars in the U.S. will skyrocket in coming weeks, and maybe even sooner than you think.
USDA says about 80% of seafood consumption in the U.S. comes from high-tariff countries. India, Indonesia, China, Canada, Vietnam.
I always say tariffs is the most beautiful word to me in the dictionary.
$7.2 billion in factory money has quietly vanished from the U.S. in just 18 months. Gone. That's enough to build 4 mega battery plants. But instead of powering up America, that cash is building jobs and dreams in Canada. Now, the pain hits hard. Coca-Cola, GM, Alcoa, Campbell's Soup, Tesla, Ford, 6 American giants all packing up, shutting down U.S. sites and firing up fresh assembly lines with Made in Canada stamped on them. Ohio, Michigan, Georgia, over 25,000 jobs are hanging by a thread. Meanwhile, Canada's rolling out the VIP welcome, lower taxes, cleaner electricity, and 40% cheaper energy. This isn't some sneaky tax loophole. This is a wake-up call. America's manufacturing muscle is rusting, and the entire supply chain might slip away before anyone even notices. So where is Trump in all this chaos? And what nightmare could hit average Americans next? Stick around, because this gets even uglier. Don't forget to hit subscribe and smash that bell so you never miss a twist. This isn't just panic over tariffs. It's cold, brutal math. Where it's cheaper, safer, and faster, that's where companies go. Trump just doubled steel and aluminum tariffs to 50% using Section 232, waving the flag of national security. Within weeks, GM and Ford yanked orders back to their Ingersoll and Oakville plants in Canada. Alcoa paused its Tennessee smelter because aluminum imports now cost 27% more. According to the Detroit Automotive Economics Institute, U.S. car makers could lose up to $180 billion. Parts now cost their weight in gold. One Silverado pickup, nearly $4,900 more. That kind of price hike could wipe out GM's entire yearly profit. But here's the real kicker. Americans can't afford higher car prices. So when profits shrink and costs climb, there's only one move left. Take the assembly line north. In Quebec, industrial power costs just 5.7 cents per kWh. Detroit, over 10 cents. That's a 45% gap. Sounds small until you realize a gigafactory burns through terawatt hours. The savings? Enough to pay for an entire new factory in year 1. Plus, clean hydro makes EVs truly zero carbon, perfect for Europe's strict emissions rules. So, Elon Musk already building a 10 gigawatt-hour battery site in Valleyfield, Quebec, quietly. No flashy press events, just action. Then there's the monster incentive package. 52.5 billion Canadian dollars from Ottawa and the provinces. Tax breaks, wage support, training programs, and even a railway to deliver nickel straight to battery plants. That's the kind of deal you build an airport with. But Canada's betting big, because every gigafactory creates 3,000 direct jobs and 10,000 more in the shadows. A government report says it'll take 18 to 20 years to earn that money back. But Prime Minister Mark Carney, he's all in, because missing the EV boom means missing the future. Now comes the final dagger, approval speed. That's what makes or breaks an investment. Canada just passed the Fast Track National Interest Projects Act. If a battery plant is national interest, government agencies have 90 days max to approve it. Washington? 18 to 24 months. It's a paper maze. Canada's smooth ride feels like a speedway in comparison. Take Campbell's Soup. They waited 2 years in Ohio just to renew a wastewater permit. Now they signed a lease in Kingston and tested the new fast-track system before quietly planning to move their whole canned soup line. Result? Canada becomes North America's new California. Clean power, friendly taxes, fast approvals, and complete immunity from global tariff wars. Now that proud Made in USA stamp, it's slowly flipping to assembled in Ontario. So the real question is no longer how many jobs are gone. It's scarier than that. Are we about to watch the entire 21st century supply chain slip out of America's hands while politicians shout "bring jobs home" with nothing left to bring back?
If Washington doesn't slam the brakes on steel and aluminum tariffs, or finally fix the power and permit mess, this migration won't stop at 6 big names. We could lose the last high-tech factories left in America. Overnight, Aluminum tariffs jumped to 50%. And suddenly, even a soda can became a battlefield. Costs exploded, 15 to 27% more just to make the same thin can. Morgan Stanley says Boston Beer alone ate an extra $20 to $30 million just for that shiny little wrapper. And Coca-Cola? They know they're next. In the very first earnings call of the year, CEO James Quincy didn't hold back. Coke's been buying empty cans from Canada for years, and now they're going all in to dodge the tariff bullets. 3 days later, it was already happening. Crown Weston's can plant in Toronto cranked up to full speed, all 3 lines running non-stop. Meanwhile, the Columbus, Georgia night shift shut down. Workers sat home for 6 months. This wasn't a last-minute call. Crown had quietly expanded Toronto's factory long ago, with room for Coca-Cola to shift 800 million cans a year. Why not Mexico? The answer's simple: power bills. In April 2025, Hydro-Quebec set a floor price, just 3.68 cents per kilowatt hour. Meanwhile, in Michigan, where Coke runs 3 bottling plants, power has soared above 8.5 cents, says the EIA. Now think about that scale. Over 1 terawatt hour goes into rolling, chilling, and pressing those drinks. Moving north saves Coke nearly $50 million a year on power alone. And there's more. Coke's locked in the aluminum too. Alcoa signed a massive hydropower deal with Hydro-Quebec, 2,100 megawatts locked in till 2040. That powers 3 smelters, producing 1.1 million tons of clean, zero-carbon aluminum every year. Why does that matter? Because it sidesteps Europe's carbon tax. Now Coca-Cola can plan profits 15 years ahead, something no US factory dares dream, with natural gas prices flipping every other week. The proof came fast. Just 6 weeks after the double tariff, Detroit Walmart shelves were lined with Canadian-made Coke. A 12-pack? $18. Still, sold out. First weekend. Customers saw a product of Canada, but Ohio steelworkers saw 280 shifts vanish. This isn't just about moving cans. It exposes deep cracks in the American supply chain. High power bills, slow permits, and tariffs that change like the wind. When Coke's cans are stamped in Quebec, Silverado frames welded in Ontario, and Tesla batteries poured in Valleyfield, America's no longer the cheapest place to build. If Washington keeps waving that 50% tariff like a flag, factories will keep walking across the Detroit River. And every can of imported soda will remind us what it costs when tariffs hit us instead. With one signature, the White House strangled the car industry. Rolled steel prices jumped another $240 per ton. That's a $1,000 hike per pickup truck body. GM didn't wait around. They pulled $2.6 billion out of the US and funneled it straight into 2 new addresses: St. Catharines, Ontario, and Bécancour, Quebec. In Bécancour, GM and POSCO's Ultium can plant just bumped its budget over $1 billion. It'll pump out 30,000 tons of cathode materials a year. For shipments, early 2026. At the same time, GM's St. Catharines site will crank out 400,000 Ultium LEV drive units yearly, saving 500 high-skill jobs, and turning Niagara into the engine room for every Cadillac Lyriq and Silverado EV. Back in the US, the dominoes fell. Reuters reports GM is furloughing 1,300 Michigan workers. Cleveland Cliffs, their steel supplier, is prepping to lay off 1,200 more. This bleeding led GM's board to pick Canada, where power sits at 5.7 cents per kilowatt hour, nearly half of Detroit's rates. Each gigawatt hour saved means $75,000 back in GM's pocket. And when your battery factory eats terawatts every year, those savings shoot into the tens of millions. Ontario pounced. The 2025 budget pumped another $92 million into their charge program, bringing EV charger funding up to $180 million, with a target of 1,300 new chargers across the province. At the same time, Ontario's manufacturing credit refunds at 10% on qualifying local equipment, transforming the Great Lakes into a live wire that connects nickel, battery tech, and EV highways. The local media had a name for it: Battery Valley. St. Catharines is no longer just a dot on the map.
Asahi Kashi's $1.56 billion separator plant is moving in. So is a recycled graphite project. This one battery chain alone, another 4,000 jobs, paying 1.5 times more than old-school manufacturing. And with it, new homes, new roads, and a supply chain America might never get back.
Meanwhile, the gap in America just keeps getting wider. Detroit Automotive Research Center warns that if the 50% tariff sticks around all year, component costs could swallow up to 30% of GM's profits. If DC doesn't untangle this mess, this won't stop with GM or Ford. The entire Midwest auto belt could vanish, factory towns going dark like ghosts from a future we can't stop. Every dollar GM spends in Canada, that's a US dollar given up, a chance at rebuilding gone. So when an Ultium Motors stamped Made in Ontario drives down Michigan Avenue, the question isn't how many jobs were taken, it's whether America just killed its own shot at winning the EV race. Alcoa saw it coming and panicked. In Pittsburgh, they ran the numbers. The old 25% tariff had already cost them $20 million, just in Q1. Then came the 50% hike. That could burn another $90 million in profits, 65% of their aluminum segment's total earnings. So, instead of wasting another dime at their Indiana smelter, Alcoa ran for the border. In December 2024, they locked in a 2.1 gigawatt power deal with Hydro-Quebec, good till 2040. That power, just 3.7 cents per kilowatt hour. Coal and gas in the Midwest, almost double. Now, with cheap, clean hydro flowing in, Alcoa is shifting more and more to Quebec. No U.S. import tariffs, no carbon taxes, no bleeding margins. But it's not just aluminum. This supply chain shift is dragging the grocery store with it. Campbell's Soup, yes, the red and white cans Warhol painted, just signed a new canning deal with a plant near Toronto. On June 13th, CFO Carrie Anderson didn't sugarcoat it. Tariffs will slash 3 cents to 5 cents from earnings per share. Multiply that by 300 million shares. That's $15 to $17 million gone each quarter. We either move can rolling to Canada or we're lighting money on fire, Anderson said. But it's not just metal. One container of soup cans from Ontario can hit Chicago in 4 hours. No aluminum tariffs, no delays. Still landing on Walmart shelves right on time. Analysts say keeping production in the US, that would cost Campbell $90 million extra this year alone, while the 50% tariff is active. So the company isn't just moving, it's changing the whole game, switching cans for paper cartons and heat-sealed aluminum pouches. Reuters calls it from cans to cartons, and it's spreading fast through the food industry. But every move like this hits harder than it seems. When Campbell cuts back U.S. can orders, steel depots in Ohio lose clients. Flatbed trucks hauling thin sheets from Gary to Camden sit parked. And Midwest wheat farmers get squeezed as flour orders dip. March numbers told the story loud and clear. The manufacturing PMI dropped to 49, contraction zone. And the number one reason given for shift cuts? Tariffs. Within just 3 months, money ran from America's Rust Belt to Canada's so-called hydro-nickel corridor. Alcoa poured in $1.2 billion to expand baking core. Campbell pulled in 4 label printers and 2 carton mills to Oshawa. Wheat from Saskatchewan, coal from the west, supply chains realigned. CN trains suddenly alive with movement again. Meanwhile, in Duluth and Toledo, aluminum can ports down over 20% year-on-year. Dock workers are now on 3 days on, 4 days off rotations, confirmed by Great Lakes Port Authority numbers. Bottom line, every percent of tariff Washington slaps on pushes another soup ladle, another aluminum roll, another freight truck full of jobs across the 49th parallel and out of America's hands.
While the White House is still fiddling with the volume on metal tariffs, 2 American giants have already made their move, and their silent shift north hits harder than any of Trump's late-night tweets ever could. Let's start with Tesla. In Markham, Ontario, a facility once hidden behind a sign that read "Building the machine that builds the machine" has now doubled in size. Inside, robot arms welding shells making the parts for Tesla's 4680 batteries, parts that go straight to Giga Texas and Giga Berlin. But the bigger play? It's in Quebec. Canada's government rolled out a massive offer, $52.5 billion in credits and subsidies, designed to build a battery empire from the ground up. From graphite dust to finished cathodes. It's no accident Musk picked a land where electricity costs just 4.3 cents per kilowatt hour, a place where he can build without worrying about 50% tariff shocks at the border. And then there's Ford. They just dropped $2.3 billion into the Oakville plant, a site once marked for shutdown. Now, it'll churn out 100,000 EV F-Series Super Duty trucks a year starting in 2026. 90% of the power will be clean, thanks to Ontario's nuclear hydro grid. And the cherry on top, a $500 million federal tax credit closed in just 3 months. Meanwhile, in Michigan, the same project is on pause, bogged down in a 26-month environmental review, and stuck with electricity prices 1.5 times higher. This support from Canada is shaking the entire North American EV chain. A report from the Budget Office says Canada's battery incentives could climb to $52.5 billion, roughly equal to the GDP of a small province. Tesla? They're building a cathode lab in Quebec. Ford? They've locked in 420,000 tons of green hot-rolled steel from Hamilton, securing production for 2 massive green furnaces still rising. And here's where it burns. Why are U.S. projects so slow? In Nevada, Tesla is still waiting on a groundwater permit. In Kentucky, Ford pays 11 cents per kilowatt hour, double what Ontario charges. In California, Tesla's recycling plant costs 18% more just for the environmental study. Meanwhile, in Canada, permits greenlit in 6 weeks. Ministers act as one-window contacts. No paperwork ping-pong. Just business. And the result? According to RBC Capital Markets, Ontario is about to gain 6,000 high-skilled jobs in just 3 years. Metal wages? Already up 11%, the fastest rise since 2009. The U.S.? The Center for Automotive Policy warns Michigan could lose 4,700 support jobs if Oakville hits full volume. Investors are watching too. Canada's 10-year green bond yields dropped 12 basis points the same week Ford made its move, and an EV ETF pulled in $420 million. 72% of it went to Canadian battery stocks. Zoom out and the picture's clear. Tesla and Ford are building a full axis, nickel, graphite, hydrogen, steel, right through Ontario and Quebec. Detroit's Big Three and U.S. suppliers are now scrambling to sign bridge deals just to stay in the game. Because the EU CBAM and California's CARB will soon demand green steel certifications by 2026, and if they're not ready, they're out. But here's the time bomb. How long before the public figures out that a made-in-USA F-150 has a battery heart and body panels shipped in from Canada? And how many more tariff games does Trump need to play before these companies stop running away? Because while Washington debates slogans like "Protect American Jobs," Canada is stealing the playbook. With clean energy, fast-track permits, and billions in industrial support. The truth is, this isn't about steel or aluminum anymore. This is a race for the future, and the winner owns cheap power, green metal, and approval systems that work. The Made in USA branch is starting to fade, and as companies once seen as national icons stick maple leafs on their factories, America's industrial pride is being packed into trucks and driven north. Coca-Cola cans are rolling out of Quebec. GM's batteries come from Niagara. Ford just made Oakville its new billion-dollar baby. And Tesla is drilling foundations for its battery base in Valleyfield just weeks after the metal tariffs hit. Money, tech, and talent are all sprinting across the 49th parallel faster than anything we've seen since NAFTA. This isn't just about a few lost factory jobs. This is the first wave. And pharma, semiconductors, they're already eyeing the exits. Because if Washington keeps energy prices high and projects tangled in red tape, Canada will become the default destination for the next industrial revolution. Yet on Capitol Hill, the debate still circles in slogans. No one's asking the hard question: why are American companies so desperate to leave? Soon, Walmart's shelves will fill with Made in Canada stickers, and the White House will have to decide: defuse the tariff bomb, invest in real clean energy, and match Canada's 90-day permit speed, or keep building that tariff wall and watch the stampede grow, even into defense, where every screw now costs 27% more thanks to our own rules. This is no longer a policy argument. It's survival math, and it affects the millions of workers who built America's middle class. Fix it fast, and those stars on the U.S. flag might still shine on factories that are alive and thriving. But let it rot, and those stars will glow over silent floors. Where's this headed next? Hit subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss what's coming.